21. Sound. Committee Room 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 21. Sound. Committee.
Third meeting of the Public Accounts Committee. Members, you do note there will be a reminder at the beginning of each meeting on the declaration of members' interests that members are required to register relevant financial or other interests in the register of members' interests. Members, the main objectives of our meeting is as follows: the briefing from the NIAO on ministerial directions. And can I remind members to be aware of what documents are open on your laptop, be aware that the new microphones are even more sensitive than before, and will pick up any side conversations, and cameras may see papers visible on the table. We have quorum. Can I inform members that at agenda item 7, the NIAO will be briefing the committee on its report into ministerial directions and also the outstanding ministerial directions from the period when the Assembly was not sitting.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
See Padraig Delargy, MLA. Can I just check, Padraig, that you can hear and see us?
Thank you very much.
That's you. Padraig, can you hear us? No.
It must be something his end because it's everything our end's okay.
I'll do another check. Padraig, can you hear us? No, we'll ask IT to look at it.
Can you send a message?
Okay, can I check that we're in public session? Okay, thank you. Okay, members, I declare the meeting open to the public. Can I welcome members to the third meeting of the Public Accounts Committee in this mandate? I would also like to put on record our warm welcome to Mr John Stewart, MLA, to this committee. Unfortunately, he is not able to be here today, but we'll be excited about working with him, and we wish his colleague Robbie Butler well as he leaves the committee after a short stay with us. Can I also take this opportunity to welcome the new Assistant Clerk, Kirsten McClelland, who is sitting to my right, who took up the position in the Assembly on Monday, and I'm sure members will join with me in wishing her well in this role, and that we will all be in best behaviour. Can I also advise members that the committee meeting will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online. However, there could be a slight delay in moving to any private session or back into public session, so I'd ask members to be patient. Can I also advise that those in the public gallery are welcome to use mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode and all devices are muted. They can connect to the Assembly Wi-Fi. The password details are available on the gallery rules. It is not permitted to take photographs or record any of this meeting. I'll just check again. Can Padraig Delargy hear us? Yes. Thank you, Padraig. Thank you. Okay, members, we'll proceed to item 1. Apologies. I've already stated John Stewart MLA has given his apologies. There is any other?
Diane will be here. She's just running out.
Okay, we'll look forward to seeing Diane. Okay, thank you, members. Draft minutes. Can I refer members to the draft minutes of the meeting of the 29th of February at page 6 of your pack? And can I seek agreement on those minutes, please?
Great.
Thank you, members. I'll sign them. Okay, can I advise members that there are no matters arising? We'll go, there's no chairperson's business, so we'll go to correspondence. Can I advise members that there's no correspondence also, so we're getting quite quick today. Can I ask members, do they have any relevant declaration of interest to declare for this particular meeting? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, members, we'll move now to agenda item 7, the Northern Ireland Audit Office briefing on ministerial directions in Northern Ireland. And just as Barbara is bringing in our witnesses, can I draw your attention to papers at pages 17 to 80 of your pack, please. The Northern Ireland Audit Office report on ministerial directions in Northern Ireland, NAO briefing paper pages 18 to 22, Ministerial Directions in Northern Ireland report pages 23 to 74, and the Department of Finance response to ministerial directions in Northern Ireland report at page 75. Okay. Okay, members, can you join me in welcoming Ms. Darina Carville, Comptroller and Auditor General for Northern Ireland, Mr. Rodney Allen, Chief Operating Officer for the Northern Ireland Audit Office, Mr. Brian O'Neill, Director of the Northern Ireland Audit Office, and Mr. Kyle Bingham, Assembly Support Officer for the Northern Ireland Audit Office. You're all very welcome. Good to have you back with us again. The weeks are flying in, actually. So I thank you for joining us. Can I ask the CNAG to brief the committee when ready?
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. I'm actually going to pass to Brian, who was the lead director on this particular report, and I'll ask Brian just to take you through some of the key findings of our report.
Okay, thank you, CNAG. Folks, I'll take the briefing paper as read. I'd just like to make a couple of comments on it. We're lucky today with Kyle here with us as well, who was instrumental in drafting and agreeing the report. So, ministerial directions, there are formal instructions from ministers directing the Permanent Secretary to proceed despite objections with the spending proposal. Ministerial directions arise when Permanent Secretaries may have concerns regarding spending proposals from ministers on the grounds of regularity, propriety, value for money, or recently feasibility. So if these concerns cannot be resolved informally, the Permanent Secretary formally asks the Minister setting out their objections for a direction. So the Minister will then provide a ministerial direction which will note the Permanent Secretary's objection with an instruction to implement the Minister's decision. The direction will normally be supported with the Minister's reasons for proceeding with the spending proposal. But prior to proceeding with the instructions set out in the direction, the Permanent Secretary must seek an additional approval from either the Minister of Finance or the Executive, if it is cross-cutting in nature, or in times of great urgency, the First Minister and Deputy First Minister prior to implementing the Minister's decision. As a result of a direction, the Minister, not the Permanent Secretary, becomes accountable to the Northern Ireland Assembly for the decision. So, a ministerial direction may be viewed as a sign of strength in a Permanent Secretary, who is simply upholding good practice by informing, applying and enforcing establishing principles of managing public money in Northern Ireland. However, it can also be viewed as a sign of risk aversion, seeking to pass on ultimate accountability for a spending proposal whose outcomes may, for example, represent poor value for money. Once a ministerial direction has been approved, the Permanent Secretary should formally notify the CNAG and provide accompanying information within 4 weeks. However, there have been occasions in the past where notifications of these ministerial directions to CNAG have been delayed and have been incomplete. So our report, which is included in your pack, provides a factual overview of the ministerial directions process in Northern Ireland, how it has operated since the formation of the Assembly back in 1998, and it sets out the responsibilities of departments, the role of the CNAG, along with the Northern Ireland Assembly, the Department of Finance and executive roles. So turning to our main findings, so a total of 105 ministerial directions have been issued since 1998, with approximate value of 2.4 billion of budgeted expenditure. Approximately half of these, there's 51 in total, represent a total expenditure of about 1.4 billion in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic, and ministers and departments were seeking to release critical funds into the local economy at a time of great need. However, we noted that since 1998, the Welsh Government has only issued one ministerial direction. The Scottish Government had issued 5, and in Westminster a total of 82 were issued. So the use of ministerial directions in Northern Ireland has been significantly more prevalent than in any other part of the UK. And in terms of the main reason for seeking a ministerial direction, value for money has been the main reason, worth 83 out of the 105 directions citing that reason. In terms of key issues the committee may wish to explore, our report raised 2 important observations. The first, as I've already alluded to, is an important but unanswered question as to why ministerial directions are significantly more prevalent here in Northern Ireland than in any other UK region. And this formed one of the 3 recommendations contained within our report. So we recommended that the Treasury Officer Accounts should consult with the Permanent Secretaries Group to determine why the use of ministerial directions here in Northern Ireland is significantly more prevalent when compared to other UK regions. The second observation is in relation to the use of the term affordability as a reason for seeking a ministerial direction. Affordability has not been used in any other UK region, being outside the parameters of managing public money in Northern Ireland, and was used 8 times in 2022. These ministerial directions were sought in a period where there was no executive, no formal budget approval in 22-23, no monitoring rounds and no means of seeking additional in-year funding. Again, the use of affordability as a reason for seeking a ministerial direction may be an area that members may wish to explore further.
Thank you. That's very helpful. The figures are questionable, actually, when you hear them. Would you like to come in, Dorina, or are you happy enough with Brian?
It's whether or not, Chair, if you want to take questions, and I know we have some men to get through today, and I'll come in at that point, but if you want to...
Okay, I have a number of questions, and then we'll go to members, so if members can indicate to the clerk as you go. Colin. I note that the updated Managing Public Money NI feasibility has been added in as a criteria for ministerial directions. Can you explain that to the committee is the first question? And as affordability, I'm a bit confused about its usage. So was it never a criteria? So it's just come out of the blue?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Chair, if I take your first question on feasibility. Department of Finance introduced this to be in line with what was in Westminster. So the Managing Public Money Northern Ireland that Stuart Stevenson briefed you on last week It has been updated in November 2023, and it now includes feasibility as a reason for seeking a ministerial direction. And I suppose that would cover, say, the capacity and capability of a project being delivered, say, within a significant time frame, or if there was enough resources to deliver a project. In terms of affordability, it hasn't been used in any other region, either Westminster, Scotland or Wales. It was used in the more latter part of the mandate, and it's a reason that doesn't form part of managing public money in Northern Ireland either.
If I can just add to that, certainly when we look at the timing of those ministerial directions that cited affordability, they were certainly at a time when it appears accounting officers were concerned around the budget situation in their departments. In two of the cases where affordability was cited, the accounting officer also noted that having consulted with the Department of Finance, they felt they were in conflict with their accounting officer duties under managing public money, being asked to spend more than they felt they had to spend, because obviously as an accounting officer they have a duty to live within the budget as allocated to them. So it seems to have come in at a time being somewhat reactive to the situation that accounting officers found themselves in or felt they were in at the time.
Okay, but when you look at other jurisdictions, it jumps off the page. 105 ministerial directions used since 98 at an approximate value of 2.4 billion. Okay, and then some of these were used during the COVID-19 pandemic when there was a need to release funds at a critical time. But by contrast, when you look at the Welsh Government in the same period, in that critical period, issued 1 ministerial directive, the Scottish Government 5, and Westminster 82. 15 related, COVID related, and 5 in relation to Brexit. Why do we issue so many more? What are we doing differently here or wrong here compared to other jurisdictions?
That's something that we actually couldn't get an answer to when we were carrying out our study. It's something that we were very keen to work out why as well. And one of the things we very much pointed out in our report is that a ministerial direction should be a rare event, because when you go back to managing public money, it does suggest a conflict of opinion between the Permanent Secretary and their Minister. And obviously that's not somewhere that anyone wants to be. Actually getting an evidence-based answer to your question why we couldn't get through our evidence, and that's why one of our core recommendation is for the Department of Finance to do more research to understand why that situation is different here.
I think it raises significant questions, and I'm just delving further into the figures. In actual fact, in relation to COVID, 51 ministerial directions were issued here, whilst other jurisdictions only issued 15. So is there an attitude within some of these departments that this is just a quick way to get things done, or is it? I just don't quite understand how this region, given its size, has issued so many ministerial directions and have gotten away with it for such a significant period of time. It really raises huge concerns. I'll be moving on to other members just in a second, but in relation to, has the process been adhered to for notifications since the reminder was issued? And how was that going in relation to the 4-week time frame for ministerial directions?
So one of our recommendations that you refer to, Chair, is for a reminder to be issued around the system. Now, we have not seen that reminder, so we couldn't say with certainty that it has issued. We certainly haven't seen it issue as yet, but the department did accept that recommendation. We have in recent weeks had receipt of a new ministerial direction which we'll be bringing to the committee in due course. It has come in within the 4-week time frame. However, it didn't have. Oh, it did. Well, yeah, it has been received at this point within the 4-week time frame, and it has had all of the backup evidence to support it provided to the office, which was the other facet to that recommendation.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And just, I want to touch briefly on the feasibility criterion that was referenced earlier. There's a so many of our capital projects, for instance, are delayed by decades. So too are smaller ones, such as school buildings and medium-sized primary schools. Could they fall foul of a feasibility test if that criteria was applied?
So feasibility as a reason to seek a ministerial direction. We haven't seen any ministerial directions as yet being sought in the grounds of feasibility.
I think because it has only been a recent addition to managing public money in Northern Ireland. It only came out in November 2023. So to date, we haven't seen anything.
Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, Colin?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose I'm curious as to other jurisdictions and how, outside of here, how frequently this is used. And I wonder, is it a kind of a product of the very unique power sharing arrangement that we have here? And then, in that sense, does it effectively act as a barrier to timely decision making? I know there was talk about risk aversion, which gave me a sense of slowing things down rather than speeding things up. Is it a kind of a barrier to timely decision making, or seen as a kind of a safeguard with the more complex? Is it a sharing of responsibility in that sense? So I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Again, it's something, as Trina has already alluded to, we couldn't get to the bottom of what the reasons were for it, given the scale of them. There was quite a lot of COVID. In COVID, 51 ministerial directions, obviously at a time of great need to get money out, but aside from that, we couldn't get to the bottom of the reasons as to your question. And it's something maybe that, yes, the Treasury Officer of Accounts has accepted that recommendation, and we're aware he's in the process of trying to come to an answer, so it's maybe something to follow up.
And other jurisdictions then, are you aware of how frequently they're used?
I suppose in the report then, obviously Westminster was 82.
No, outside other countries. I'm talking about, particularly say across Europe or the South.
We didn't look at that as part of the scope of the report, no.
Okay.
But even, Colin, in comparison to neighbouring jurisdictions, the figure is far too high.
Yeah, I'm wondering beyond that. Yeah, I absolutely
really,
agree with that.
And the key point here, Brian, I suppose, is I understand given the crisis with the pandemic, money had to go out and get to the relevant people and ultimately departments, but other jurisdictions didn't do that. So why were we doing it on such a hefty scale? And I'd really like to know the answer to that question. That's the $1 million question. Okay.
We did try and come at it from the other side of that, the other angle, if you like. We tried to speak to our counterparts, in the other jurisdictions in Wales and Westminster, but because they are so rare there, you couldn't even get a sense of why they're being sought in those other jurisdictions. There were very one-off reasons, so it made comparability very, very difficult.
And is it used beyond these? Is it a frequent thing that's used in Parliament or in government elsewhere?
Well, that's it. We didn't go beyond Westminster, Wales and Scotland were our comparators. Yeah.
Okay. David?
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify in my own head, and then there was 4 criteria laid out, and then affordability as well. Is that a 5th, or is it affordability sit alongside?
No.
The affordability was never one of the criteria.
Okay.
So there was regularity, propriety,
Yeah,
and value for money. They were the 3.
Right.
And since November last year, feasibility has been included as the 4th criteria.
Right, okay.
But the affordability was never part of the question.
Okay, I'm with Daniel on this, because if you look at the numbers and you take COVID out of it, and I understand I kind of understand a little bit in COVID that you want to get stuff out, but if you take COVID out of it, there's still, whatever that works out as, my maths isn't great, 60 odd in the UK as a whole, and there's 50, in England, and there's 50 here. If we're 2.5% or of the population, that should be 1 or 2 rather than 50 if you take that out. But you know, is this particular departments using this, particular ministers using it, or is it right across? Is it right across all departments?
It was at the time during COVID in particular, a lot of the ministerial directions were Department for Economy and the Department of Health. Obviously that's for the economy and the health at that time, when the money was required to get out into the local economy at that time.
There's 50 outside of COVID, or 54 outside of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
There's 51 in COVID. I kind of understand the COVID bit, if somebody needs to get stuff out during COVID quickly, but there's 54 outside of that period of time, so it's about half, and half.
They were from a range of departments.
Yeah.
They're all, it's highlighted in the report, yeah.
We have them listed at Appendix 1 to the report, and if you scan your eye down them, it really is very wide ranging, because we thought that ourselves as a particular issue or a particular conflict in one department, but we couldn't really find evidence to conclude. They just seem quite widespread and quite prevalent.
Which I think begs a larger question about what is the attitude to ministerial directions across these departments. Like, can an accounting officer, for instance, create new criteria off the bat, for instance, like affordability by themselves? Can they just say, right, well, we need to justify these, so we'll use this criterion? You know, where I just find this difficult to understand, how we've reached this level of ministerial directions without any clear reasoning for it.
Sure, it's set out in Management Public Money. The language and the way it's worded is quite loose. So what it says is that there are examples where a permanent secretary can request a ministerial direction, and these examples are, and then that's your value for money regularity. So by using the very word examples implies that there are other reasons you could request a ministerial direction for.
And just that's helpful as well, Kate. And just to come back to you, David, just by comparison here over COVID, because I don't think they were all justified in my own mind when I hear the figures. 15, no, I don't say justified, but I mean, you could explain it almost, but 15 altogether across all jurisdictions compared to 51 in Northern Ireland. Like, that raises serious questions, and I'd be keen to hear some clarification as to how that came about. So thank you for the work on it. Cathal?
Thanks, Chair, and once again, you're very welcome. As I listen to the conversation, I mean, it's quite interesting. I suppose to break it down, we need to do the pre-COVID and post-COVID. So you can understand when I look at some of the things that was given out for COVID, but likewise, you'd have to ask, why didn't Wales do it, or why didn't Scotland do it? So, and I mean, to be fair, Kyle, you'd say that, I don't know, it's a governance issue. You know, there's a deep-rooted issue there that somebody can say, right, that's like, I'm not saying they snap their fingers, but I mean, if we're making comparisons across, and that's all we can do across other jurisdictions, we're not getting answers there. So it's unique to ourselves. It has to be unique, because if Wales only used so many during COVID and we use 50, if Scotland only done 6, it has to be the structures in place. It has to be given whoever's given that direction. So I suppose it's a deep dive ourselves into the departments, is what I'm saying to you, and that's obviously going to be slightly difficult. But that's what we actually need to do, and it's not just picking them, because I mean, it seems to be across a lot of the departments, Chair, to be honest with you, if you look, even COVID or not. So, and it's going to be very hard for us to ask the right questions and to get to, because there's no point in, I'm not saying don't look across to Westminster, but there's nothing there for us. It's only a comparison, and they're limited in what they can give us, and maybe I don't know. It's just, you know, which we can certainly ask the question. I'm just trying to get my head around exactly where we can genuinely go to get the answers to it. I would just follow the paper trail back to some of the questions we've already and some of the reports we've already done, and just, you know, see where we can take it. But, you know, nobody can argue when we're all crying out for business, getting supports or money for cancer services. But it's like the Chair says, why didn't it happen in Wales, or why didn't it happen? We were all fighting for individual cases and businesses. Why didn't the rest of the jurisdictions do it? And they didn't. They seemed to have a mechanism there to get that out, or did they read it, or our need wasn't any greater than anybody else's. That's all I'm saying, Chair. But I mean,
Just to follow on to that, could it be the case, Darina, that I'm just thinking about the collapse of this institution. So it was down from 2017, and members will correct me, to around 2020. So we re-enter these institutions in the aftermath of the worst of COVID, but we're still here then to mitigate against the consequences of it, to try and help people. Would that be a reason for the higher level of ministerial directions at that time, because there was no government for a 3-year period, and all of a sudden we were back in, had to respond and react, and ultimately this was the only mechanism to which we could get it done? Could that be possible?
I don't know, Chair, because we're all reacting at the one time. Scotland was, we were back in that time frame, March, from that period. Every jurisdiction was in the same boat. Whether they had different systems set up to deliver, I don't know. I wouldn't have thought so. I don't know.
Yeah, ministerial directions are procedural.
Yeah.
They are a procedure, and a procedure that is laid out in managing public money. So when the institutions were in place, the procedures were in place, budgets were given out, permanent secretaries had their roles and responsibilities, ministers had their roles and responsibilities.
Yep.
So the procedure, of ministerial directions then could work within that confine, if you like. And I suppose one of the reasons we looked probably to Westminster in particular is that we are managing public money in Northern Ireland is very closely aligned to the managing public money in Westminster. So procedurally, those two jurisdictions in this instance are quite closely aligned. So it does beg quite a significant question as to why there is such differences there. I suppose we couldn't get to the bottom of procedurally. It probably begs the question then about behaviours.
Yeah.
And that's what, if you take it right back to what's laid out in managing public money, ministerial directions suggest a conflict of opinion between a permanent secretary, an accounting officer, and a minister. So, because they are so widespread, and a bit like the point you were making there, Cathal, we couldn't, sort of question the behaviours of all of those individuals. That's why we had probably quite an unusual recommendation to ask the Treasury Officer of Accounts, who does play a central role here too, to try and investigate further. Because we do think now, with the institutions back up and running, that it's important we do get to the bottom of this.
I agree. Thank you. Thanks, Tom?
Thank you, Chair. Quite a number of issues have been raised here on this issue. I think it's getting to the cause of the blockage. What is the blockage that is prohibiting action being taken? And therefore it requires then a ministerial direction to get that moving. And I think it's back down to that, as what is actually the cause within the department or within government of a lack of progress, and therefore takes a ministerial direction to get that moving or whatever. And I think that's where we'll have to get to.
Yeah, and I suppose, other than the commonality of COVID was one, but when you look at the whole range of ministerial directions after that, there isn't much commonality. They're all for individual and different purposes. So COVID was one commonality, but we then couldn't really point to there's a common issue thereafter, which is a difficulty.
COVID can be used for far too many things,
Yeah.
and I think that needs to be set to the side and look then at the real reasons as to why this has happened.
Yeah, and I think that's the point that the Chair was making earlier, and others have made as well, that even though there were a lot of, set COVID aside, there's still a lot outside that COVID reasoning as well. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Cheryl?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. This is really interesting. Just regarding the recommendation 3, consulting with the Permanent Secretaries Group, has that happened yet? Sorry, and has there been a response to that recommendation? Also, looking across, all the ministerial directions, there's some really positive things that were done during that time. And it's quite frustrating to say that they've had to even go to that extent to get those things pushed on. I'm just looking at the Children's Funeral Fund and mental health funding, and even just simple things like road maintenance. But as Tom said, what was the blockage at that point that they actually had to go to a ministerial direction? You know, and is there a fundamental problem here in Northern Ireland in comparison to elsewhere that we're having to use these? And what is that? And obviously we don't have that answer today. But there's obviously something that is causing this.
I suppose in relation to your first point, we're not aware of what progress has been made with the Treasury Officer of Accounts engaging with all the permanent secretaries as to why that fundamental reason that we've spoken about here, as to why there is so many more ministerial directions here. And I suppose in relation to your second point, the issue becomes between the permanent secretary and the minister as to some concern over value for money or regularity or propriety issue that has led to the direction being issued in the first instance.
Thank you. It's just to say it is that the figures there are very shocking, you know. So,
and just add, sorry, to Brian's point around we don't know what progress has been made with the Permanent Secretaries Group. It's important to say it's included in your pack. In the response from the department did accept that recommendation, so they have committed to engage, but as I say, we just don't know how far on they are with that engagement process.
They haven't given a time scale or anything along those lines yet, no?
No. It does say DOF will update CNIG of its engagements and conclusions on this issue. So we've had no update or conclusions. So I suppose we can only assume it's still in progress in some way.
Just to supplement that as well, Cheryl, a lot of the MDs that were issued here were issued on the grounds of value for money, from what I can see. But I don't understand when it comes to Scotland and Wales how they've not had the same concerns when it came to the action that they took in the same circumstances, or why they didn't issue it under that particular criteria. There's more questions than answers. But it's an important piece of work. Okay, Diane and then Padraig.
Yeah, thank you, and good to see you again. I just wanted to ask in terms of the wider procedure on this, because I'm looking down the list and I'm just trying to understand, is there a pushback mechanism for a minister? Because to me a lot of these decisions look quite routine, and should these accounting officers have been able to sign off on these, like especially when it's things like your routine sign off of your expenditure in Department of Health for the year. So if they're saying, we can't sign off on this and we want a ministerial direction, is the minister able within the procedure to turn back and say, well, I don't really agree with your reasons, you should be able to take that decision?
Yeah, so it's important to understand that ministerial direction, it's when a permanent secretary objects to a spending proposal proposed by a minister. For example, they have value for money concerns, so maybe they've crunched the numbers and it's looking like it's not a value for money project, so they'll flag it up with the minister. But the minister may wish to proceed regardless of that, and then at that point a permanent secretary is quite entitled to seek a direction, because they're just following managing public money in Northern Ireland, and quite within their rights to do that. So they will flag that up, seek a direction, and then the direction basically forces the permanent secretary to proceed with the spending proposal regardless of whether or not he thought it wasn't value for money.
So in terms of then, the going forward, the Treasury Officer of Accounts and getting together with the Permanent Secretary's group, to follow on from Cheryl, it's quite an important recommendation. It'd be good to see the feedback, because I would be very interested to understand, whenever the Permanent Secretaries are sitting down together, what their feeling is as to why they have to bring these. Do they feel that conflicted with their ministers, or is there some sort of conversations and training around that? Because as you say, we're so much higher here than anywhere else, and you're just trying to understand, is there something quite dysfunctional going on in terms of how our civil service is working with our ministers, or what exactly is causing this, to try to get to the bottom of it, to make things a bit more smooth running? Because every single time you're going to this, it's a delay and it's taking longer to get the spending approved and could be holding up schemes.
So just further on, and then Padraig, you're next. Just in terms of, is it the case that when the permanent secretary is just simply saying, no, this is not value for money, and it's a key priority for that particular minister as party, or even the executive, is it the point to which the accounting officer disagrees with the political decision of the politician, effectively, which is the minister. And there's countless projects, for instance, in the pipeline that'll fall under this category. You know, or maybe is it the case, Dorina, that accounting officers here in Northern Ireland for each department are more risk averse than other jurisdictions because maybe of our financial situation?
It's very difficult to conclude, and we did state in the report that you could perceive risk aversion in some cases. That said, and you'll see later on when if you look at the detail that goes behind a ministerial direction, as Kyle says, quite often, obviously, an accounting officer has a range of responsibilities, including approving business cases for big key decisions, etc. If they determine that something is not value for money, they will put that back to the minister with a very detailed rationale as to why they are objecting to that course of action. So there's a lot of evidence provided back to the minister as to why they have concerns around value for money or concerns around regularity. And that should, the minister should be then fully briefed as to the reasons, as to the concerns of the Permanent Secretary. The minister then does procedurally have the right to then issue a direction to say, please proceed, despite all of the concerns, the issues that you've raised with me. And then there's a procedure thereafter for that to be either approved by the Executive or via the Department of Finance thereafter. So it should be clear to both parties involved, what the conflict is and the rationale to proceed.
And that would be an extremely I'm sorry for taking up so much time on this, but that'd be an extremely challenging position for a minister, because if a permanent secretary is advising a minister not to take that action, but the minister is minded for a multitude of reasons that he has to take that action, is that ultimately the reason why many occasions we end up with larger projects under a public inquiry situation? Does that help then the minister inform the decision that is about to be made?
I wouldn't have the evidence to link ministerial directions to public inquiries. It's not something that we've looked at, Chair, so I couldn't answer that. I wouldn't have the evidence to answer that, sorry.
No, thank you. Padraig?
Thank you, Chair. Just checking you can hear me okay, yeah?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Look, thank you for the presentation. Most of my questions you've already clarified in response to other answers, so thank you for that. Essentially, my query that I was going to raise was one which Cheryl has touched on already, and that was around the fact that I think when we hear ministerial statement, of course, we're all a bit hesitant about that and associate it with a negative thing straight away. There are obviously instances in which that's been used, necessarily positively, for example, during COVID. But it really was around which other jurisdictions we would be most comparable to, because I'm aware that there are a lot of variables in terms of how many ministries there are in terms of timeline of these, and I think that this has been a really interesting piece of work. So you've already clarified my two queries, so less of a question and more of a comment on that, so thanks very much.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay, thank you. Members, just a final point of clarification on this particular item. Recommendation 3, the Treasury Officer of Accounts should consult with the Permanent Secretaries Group to determine why the use of MDs and NA is significantly more prevalent when compared to other UK regions. It's been touched on by Diane and by Cheryl. Are you aware whether this consultation has commenced now and is ongoing?
We have had no update now other than the department accepting that recommendation, but we've had no further update on it.
Okay, and when was the recommendation accepted?
The response came back in June 23, 22nd of June 23.
June 23, and you're not aware of any consultation?
No.
Okay, and you see clarification now. So, okay, Carol, you?
No, just because it's an interesting conversation, Jared, just to sort of throw top on saying again, you see, because if you listen to all the conversations, I mean, you start with a ministerial decision, then you end up with a ministerial direction. But you have your programme for government, you have your own department budgets, you have your own department priorities. So we have to align all that to see exactly where this all starts and where it ends up. But and also the case of the amount of monies now. I know it sounds a lot over a period of time, but I mean, if we looked at a minister signed off on a major capital work with that, which they're not going to do, but when I think, the minister goes in and he or she has their priorities. Now, and I know the accounting officer has to, but they normally come with recommendations to the minister as well, and in all the course of a mandate. So I don't know where we've investigated that side of it. Obviously, for us is to look at the ministerial directions and value for money. But I mean, we need to go back to the start of it all, the process, because I mean, it's different if somebody makes the decision during COVID. But if they give a ministerial direction during the mandate, that's a slightly different matter. And sure, that's, so you could argue it's a ministerial decision or a ministerial direction. Do you know what I mean? It's our job to look at that from the VFM, so it's quite an interesting subject, Chair, but...
It is interesting, and we thank you for the work that you have done on it. And there's still major questions around the significant level compared to other jurisdictions, and the justification for that. Members, just given the sense of feeling in relation to this important discussion, I was going to recommend that we write to the TOA, but I think that given what we've discussed today, we write to invite the TOA to this committee to determine why the use of ministerial directions is significantly more prevalent here than any other region in the UK, and also to seek clarification on the term affordability in the approval of ministerial directions, the rationale for its use, and whether this term will continue to be used as a reason for the approval of ministerial directions. So can I seek agreement from members to invite the TOA to this committee as soon as possible to answer those questions?
Great.
Chair, can I ask, would the committee feel that we could write to ask for an update on those recommendations from last June in the Audit Office report, given that it would appear there hasn't been any feedback on movement on some of them?
Yeah, I think that's helpful as well. I would assume that the reaction of others would be the same as ours in this committee when they seen those figures. So I'm disappointed actually that there hasn't been a response since June 23, and I think within our correspondence we should outline that this matter should be taken seriously and that we would like that clarification as soon as possible. So thank you for that. Members agreed with that, yes?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Members, okay, we'll move on. Can I draw members' attention to the papers relating to ministerial directions at pages 83 to 267 and refer to the papers as follows. The Northern Ireland Audit Office cover report on ministerial directions at page 83 to 88. Funding increase for the COVID employment and skills initiative at 89 to 96. Belfast Distillery Company Limited at pages 97 to 109. City of Derry Airport at pages 110 to 120. Bounce Back Scheme at pages 121 to 132. PIG Support Scheme 1 of 2 at pages 133 to 144. PIG Support Scheme 2 of 2 at pages 145 to 157. The Engage Programme at 1 of 2, pages 172 to 197. Engage Programme 2 of 2 at pages 198 to 236. GP Training Places at pages 236 to 248. And the 2022-23 expenditure, 1 of 2 at pages 249 to 266, and 22-23 expenditure at pages 267 to 269. Can I advise members that these papers relate to 10 ministerial directions approved in the period when the Assembly was not sitting from the 28th of March 2022. Can I advise members that at pages 83 to 88 the Northern Ireland Audit Office has provided a briefing paper which summarises the process for ministerial directions during the period when the Assembly was not sitting from the 28th of March 2022, the reasons cited for ministerial directions and a summary of ministerial directions that were issued and approved, and also those that were issued not approved are all provided. Can I refer members to the Clerk's brief in the tabled pack at page 4 to 8, which provides a high-level summary of the 10 ministerial directions, and I'll ask the Clerk to speak to that, please. Thank you, Clerk.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, as already referenced, the ministerial directions before you today are the ones then that were sought during this period since March 2022. The reason that why it's come to PAC is that in line with managing public money Northern Ireland, the guidance, the CNAG is required to bring to the attention ministerial directions that have been confirmed by either the Department of Finance Minister or Executive as appropriate. There is, as you know, a number of papers relating to these ministerial directions which provide the background to why they were sought, and those, as I say, are in your pack to just sort of make things a bit easier in terms of the overview in your table pack from pages 4 to 8. It's just like a high-level summary, so it just gives you a summary of all of those ministerial directions, and the reasons for their approval, which includes in it the affordability. You can see that there. So there is quite a lot of information. So hopefully that gives you a brief summary and that overview to get to the bottom of what these were all about. So there was 10 that was eventually approved. Of the 12, 2 were not approved, but they were to do with budgetary issues, and then they were withdrawn. Some other figures then, the total value of the 10 approved came to 34.35 million. In terms of how the approval process happened, once the Assembly was dissolved, the only route for approval of a ministerial direction sought was through the caretaker Finance Minister, as there was no executive in place at that time. Of the 12 issued, then 10 were approved by the Finance Minister, 2 were not, as I've alluded to. The 2 not approved, those were in relation to the 2022-23 budgetary pressures, which were being experienced by the Department of Health and were subsequently not required following the finalisation of the 22-23 budget by the Secretary of State. We have talked already about some of the reasons that were cited for the ministerial directions, and the majority were in line with the managing public money Northern Ireland guidance on value for money or regularity concerns. However, as already alluded to, the term affordability then was used as a reason. And again, if you look at the table that provided, the summary table, you can see that. And then, of course, there was the issue then of feasibilities. You won't see that because that wasn't in the guidance at the time. So, as I said, it was more around that criteria, affordability. If you then look at the summary of ministerial directions issued and approved, there was 3 from the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, and that came to a value of 3.8 million for value for money and regularity. The Department of Health, there was 1, and that was around affordability. Department of Infrastructure 2, the value was 3.9 million, and that was value for money, regularity and affordability. Department for Communities, there was 2 issued to a value of 3 million, and again the reasons for that were value for money and regularity. The Department of Education issued 2, which amounted to 20.85 million, and that was around affordability. So that was how it came to the total of 34.35 million. I've mentioned the ones that were not approved. They were the Department of Health, and that was later resolved through the budget. So those are a flavour of the ministerial directions. As I say, they've come to you now, as that process has to complete. It wasn't possible to do that before now, obviously, so that is why they're with you today.
Thank you, Clerk. Would you like to respond first, and if there's anything you'd like to say? Or?
No, I can just take questions, Chair.
Okay. Members? Any in particular? No? Okay. You can see some of you can see the nature of some of these. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Well, we'll move on to the next one. That's okay. Well, members, if you're happy to note the chair's brief or clerk's brief, and then we can move on to CNAG. Okay.
Content.
Well, unless there's... I'm happy enough.
I think the only thing to point out, we typically wouldn't be bringing these to you in such a volume and such a scale, you know, that we will bring them back to the committee as they arrive. You have today, as Lucia has pointed out, a period of ministerial directions, and I suppose it is important to note that the period that you're looking at now, circumstances were somewhat unusual as well, and certainly not comparable to other jurisdictions. You know, we had caretaker ministers in place, you know, the institutions, there was the end of COVID. We're looking at very, very unusual positions here. That said, the volume of them does, and the scale of use, you know, we do have 34.35 million of spend here. It does increase the risk of public spending where we have spend that concerns have been raised by the accounting officer at the time. So I think just back to our earlier point, these number do illustrate that it is worth getting to the bottom of why so many are occurring. You know.
Yes.
And just a wee point of that, I mean, you know, caretaker or not, the attitude was still the same. You know, I mean, the processes were still the same.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that's the issue. You know, I mean, so we had a good enough conversation about it. We could chat about it in some good ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And as you say, the dates of this will go back to November 2022, so they're not live in the current financial year, but obviously we note the significance of the number of them. Are there any of them specifically out of these 13 that you believe raise any particular issues that you would want to highlight or bring to our attention, or is it just the fact that there are the volume of ministerial directions that you're raising?
No, any issues we've sort of already touched on in terms of the affordability point that came out in some of them. This is the first time we saw this arise, but as I say, in two of those cases in particular, the two I think that you had referred to in your earlier question around routine spending in a department, that ministerial direction, the accounting officer was quite clear that it was affordability, but on the advice of DOF, it was also around conflict with accounting officer responsibilities. So I think it's quite clear from that at that point in time, the accounting officer was concerned that they would overspend on the budget allocated. It's unusual and concerning, but hopefully it's very much around the point in time that we were dealing with. I say hopefully, so hopefully we shouldn't see that recurrence going forward for that particular rationale.
Just in terms of an overview of the 10 directions, did they all meet the requirements of best practice? For instance, provide justification, and were all legislative rules and requirements met for each of the 10?
Yeah, they all followed the procedure. There's and I think it's detailed there for you. They all had quite significant submissions put up to the minister outlining the rationales for them, and then equally ministers wrote back to permanent secretaries where they were issuing a direction explaining their rationale for doing so. So procedurally, they all followed the process as set out in managing public money.
Okay. I just think, and this is probably for the TOA as well, but it might be helpful if we had sought out the process in other jurisdictions as to what they use or do in that scenario where there may be a disagreement with the accounting officer and the minister of the day. Do they have a different way of dealing with these sorts of issues, or do they just not arise as often as ours, and which really raises a couple of questions. So I'm assuming that the problem we're facing here is not unique to Northern Ireland. Certainly the solution we're using is, but in terms of the problem, and I would be very keen to know what happens when such disagreements arise in Scotland and Wales, for instance, and how they get round it, because obviously they're not using ministerial directions to resolve it. I think that might shine a bit of a light on some of it, if that's possible.
There's one there in relation to Belfast Distillery Company, Department for Infrastructure, amount 900,000, and it states that the Minister issued a ministerial direction, I think it should say, upon the acquisition of the Belfast Distillery Company. It goes on to say, the purpose of the direction was to enable works to recommence under the new management in the absence of a bond intended to indemnify the department for remedial works required on the building should the company run out of funds prior to the completion of works. So do we know at this stage, was the money ever needed? If it was, it almost appears to be a contingency. Was it needed, or did it indeed indemnify the department, or did that money, was it put out, and can it be clawed back?
Just a more general point in terms of that question, would you cover off the money that is stated in each of these ministerial directions, or what they anticipate or what they could potentially spend rather than what they actually spend? So they could end up spending a lot less, or they could spend more. But in the course of our financial audits, we keep an eye on each of these individual things, and if there's any concerns raised to us or we find anything, then that would become part of our reporting through our financial audits, and we haven't picked up anything as a result of any of these.
So I'm just wondering why is the department allocating 900,000 to indemnify itself? I'm not quite clear about what sort of a device that was, if you like. So was this in case the department became liable, but surely the department already are liable when they're paying out the 900,000?
I'll maybe come back to you on that one, if that's okay, because we haven't, there was nothing came out of our, as Kai says, nothing came out of our audit of the Department for Infrastructure in that year, but we can specifically look into that one a bit further for you, Colin, and come back to you. Yeah,
a lot of the rest of them are more straightforward in the sense that they're allocated of money for an identified thing. So just a wee bit more information would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, members, at this point we're going to go on to close, but I don't think it's necessary at this juncture. We will come in at the end under AOB to discuss the letter and any other issue that may arise. All agreed?
Right.
Okay, members, draft forward work programme. Can I refer members to the draft forward work programme at page 405? And can I ask the clerk to brief the committee, please?
Okay, thank you. The main thing I just wanted to bring to your attention was the visit for next week to the audit office. So that if you go to page 10 of the table pack, you'll see the proposed outline for the visit. It's University Street, so it's an opportunity for you to have a look around and meet the staff. So proposal would be 1 to 2 p.m. arrival and refreshments. So that would be an opportunity to meet and greet and just find out a bit more about the work of the audit office. Then from 2 o'clock to 2:45, there's a session that's been organised with public accountability training. It's Mr. Brian Wally who does training around public audibility and accountability training. So that is going to be an interesting session. He can bring with him experience of how he has met and with the different public accounts committees and also accounting officers here in Northern Ireland, and share his experiences and some tips for the new committee. And then proposed finished of 4 o'clock. May go a wee bit over that, but I think I just wanted to check if those timings were okay with everybody. There will also be parking available in the car park at the premises. And just if in advance, if you could just let us know of any dietary requirements for the lovely sandwiches that the Audit Office have promised to provide on the day. So that's about it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Just to say in advance, Communities Committee runs till 1 or possibly past. It may not just be in time to take full availability of that, but it's a generous offer. But I hope to be there at 2 p.m. for the start of the official.
Just similar, I'm on the policing board, so just in terms of time, it might be slightly late, but
Same, Chair. I'm on the police board as well.
The sandwiches won't go cold, Cahill, don't worry.
I was looking forward to some hot food this time round, Chair. You know, we've been down there, you know, but the budgets don't stretch, you know.
Yeah, okay.
I can make a suggestion so that it's not too tight. Like, we could just make it a bit later and go on to 4:30, if that would, you know, be better. So I suppose really just to get an idea if 1:30's achievable or 2 o'clock, because you could do something, you know, at 2 to 2:30 and then start the training. Then we can just push it out a bit. Mr. Wally, his I believe his flight back is not until later that evening. So you know he's happy to accommodate times around the members.
I'm happy with whatever. It's just as those that have another meeting.
Work MUs as well.
Every time
half
we get
one makes a bit of difference.
There's 300 recommendations to get through as long as we get through. Yeah, Chair, that way.
I suppose any flexibility is more helpful than...
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of the later the better, but within the parameters.
Yes,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay, all agreed, members?
Agreed.
You happy enough?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, members, any comments in relation to the draft forward work programme? No? Okay. Are we happy to agree the draft forward work programme?
Great.
Okay, thank you. Can I refer members to the draft programme for the visit to the NIO in the table pack, pages 9 to 10? The clerk has already outlined that we'll be there next week at 1:30, and I appreciate that, and members are happy with that. So the next item is any other business? Okay, we'll go into closed session to, if members are agreed to discuss a number of issues.
Great.
Thank you.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21.